Reverend Jennifer invited Keith Giles as our speaker again today. Mr. Keith Giles. Keith is a best-selling author of the 7-part Jesus series. I want to make sure I got that right. And the Sola series, examining the beauty of the divine mystery. Keith has been interviewed on CNN with Anderson Cooper, Coast to Coast with George Noory, and by many more. His latest books, The Quantum Sayings of Jesus, Decoding the Last Gospel of Thomas, The Quantum Gospel of Mary, and The Lost Gospel of Truth, have all been certified as bestsellers by Amazon. Some of his material is on display in the social hall, so afterwards you can get a look at it and even purchase it. I would now like to invite Keith to the stage. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much for having me. It's wonderful to be back with you again. And this time I'm really blessed that my wife Wendy could join me. I will say a minute ago when David said, and now Wendy will come and read our devotion this morning, my wife Wendy was sort of like, I am? Oh, it was a different Wendy, yes. Well, good morning. I want to start, I guess, by asking you a bit of a question. And you don't have to raise your hand or anything, but just, ask yourself this question and think about this. How many of you feel tired? And I don't mean the kind of tired like, I didn't get enough sleep last night or I had to get up early because of the time change or something like that. I mean a deep down soul tired. The kind of tired that comes from living inside of a world that feels like it's constantly on edge. Well, if that's you, you're not alone and you're not broken. It may be that you're paying attention. A few weeks ago, I listened to an interview with a sociologist and New York Times columnist, Tressie McMillan Cottom, and she said some things that really, honestly, inspired a lot of what I'm going to share with you this morning. But she was talking about this feeling that we all have of this exhaustion that we have. And one of the things she said was, American institutions aren't broken. They are working exactly as designed. That reminded me, years ago, I spent like 10 years working in a corporate kind of technology company back in California. And there was a saying that went around the business world quite a lot back then, probably still does. And it was this: the systems you currently have are perfectly designed to give you the results you are now receiving. And it's a great saying because what it makes us realize is a lot of times what we do is when things aren't going the way we like, we sort of will try to manage the results. But what this quote says is, no, it's not the result. You need to look at the system that you have. That's what's creating what you're receiving. Fix that, change that, and you'll change the outcome. Another very famous saying you may have heard is along those lines, says, in order to experience something you've never experienced before, you will have to do something you have never done before. So it gives us really an opportunity that if we don't like the world we have now, we're going to have to tell ourselves a better story. Because what we're experiencing right now is because of the story that we've told ourselves. That story got us here. But that same story won't take us anywhere different, anywhere new. The scripture puts it this way: without a vision, the people perish. In other words, when we lose the story of where we're going and where we came from and who we are, we lose ourselves along the way. Author, poet, and teacher Drew Dellinger says, every other culture in the history of the planet has told stories that they were embedded in nature, that they were connected to nature, that nature was their mother, the source of their existence. We have told stories that we are separate from nature, that we are superior to nature, that we walk around on top of nature. And he says, I think this sense of alienation has led us to desecrate the earth. You know, it's part of that story that we tell ourselves about our distance from nature and a need to dominate nature. It comes from really a misunderstanding of what's going on in the book of Genesis, right? When God creates all these beautiful things and he says to Adam and Eve, some people, the way they teach it, that God says to them, now go and basically dominate the earth. Now, how many of you do any gardening, right? If you've ever grown a plant or do any gardening, do you ever wake up in the morning, get all your gardening clothes on and get ready and say, I'm going to go outside and I'm going to dominate my garden? If so, I'm imagining things aren't growing very well in your garden, because that's not what you do, right? You nurture, you cultivate. At best, you collaborate with nature, something that's already in motion, that's already happening without you even having to be there. But what you get to do is help it along, right? So the story that we tell matters. Now, I got to say, a few years ago, I love books. I love this Co-S bookstore. My gosh, I live in El Paso. If I wish I lived in Las Cruces, I'd be here every day. But I was at an old bookstore, not this one, one in El Paso, about 5 years ago. And I was going through and I came across this book, and I read the first chapter of this book, and I was like, I got to buy this book. And it was a collection of Native American creation mythology. And the very first story, I'm standing there reading this and I was tearing up. It was so beautiful. And it was the Cheyenne creation story. And I'm going to just summarize it for you. Basically what it says is that in the beginning, God creates, the earth, and it goes through the details in every little part of the earth that God creates, right? The land, the water, the sky, the ocean, the fish, the birds, the trees, the fruit, everything that God creates. As God creates it, God starts falling in love with this creation, and God calls this creation a beautiful woman. And so God goes through all these steps and creates all these beautiful things. And when he's all done, he looks at this beautiful woman, this beautiful earth he's created, and he says to himself, I wish there was some way that I could find a way to remind this beautiful woman, this beautiful earth I've created every day, how beautiful she is and how much I love her. And then he gets an idea. I'll make humans. And these humans, he makes them and he tells them, this is what I want you to do every day. Remind this beautiful woman I've created how much I love her and how beautiful she is. Wow. Standing there in that bookstore, I thought, I wish I had been born Cheyenne. Can you imagine growing up and believing that that is why you exist? This is why God made human beings, to tell the earth, to remind the earth how beautiful she is. So the stories that we tell make a difference. They change us. I also, by the way, one of my favorite things, I love reading books and I love science fiction. That's my favorite. And there's a friend of mine, he runs a science fiction channel. His name is Damien Walter. He's British. But he talks a lot about humanity's need for a new mythology. Because he says, every civilization lives inside of a story about who we are, and that story helps us dream about the future, about what should come next. And if we look at the stories that we're telling ourselves now, or stories that we are being told, quite honestly, quite often these are not stories we are telling, these are stories people are telling us and asking us to buy into. And a lot of those stories, if you think about it, the most popular stories, movies and television, are stories about the end of the world, the collapse of society, how humans can survive after everything has fallen apart. Shows like The Last of Us, The Walking Dead, Fallout, Pluribus, the one that's filmed up here in Albuquerque. And so all of these stories are about, what happens when everything's gone, everything falls apart. And I would say those stories are not really stories about zombies or radiation or the apocalypse. They're about this quiet belief that we've all come to realize, that the systems we have now don't work anymore, and maybe everything needs to burn down before anything can be healed. And maybe that isn't nihilism, maybe it's grief. Maybe it's our collective intuition saying, this story can't continue the way it is. It's also fascinating to look at the heroes of the stories, again, that we are given. And quite often, those heroes are billionaires, right? Tony Stark is Iron Man. Bruce Wayne, he was Batman. People with superhuman powers or great wealth. But here's the problem. The real billionaires aren't actually the heroes, are they? In fact, a lot of the suffering in the world today is because of the billionaires. And so maybe we need to stop listening to stories that try to convince us that we need to put our hope and our trust in people of great wealth or great power. Maybe there is no superhero coming to save us and make it all better. Maybe our real hope is in one another. Maybe the best way out of this dystopian story is to simply learn to love one another and to tell stories about the power of our oneness and our connection. Because when we stop telling these hopeful stories about the future, that's where these dystopian stories come in. Again, my friend Damian Walter puts it this way. It's not that dystopian stories deleted the future, it's that we stopped telling better stories and we left the door open. And resistance and change often begin in the arts. That's what one of my favorite science fiction authors, Ursula K. Le Guin, said. Near the end of her life, she gave a wonderful talk, and she says this: "We live in capitalism. Its power seems inescapable. So did the divine right of kings. Resistance and change often begin in the arts, and very often in the art of words and the stories that we tell." So the stories that we tell matter. Again, the stories of the past are what got us here, but those stories will not carry us into the future that we're longing for. I started off by asking you how many of you felt tired and overwhelmed. And believe it or not, it's not because we know too much. Again, sociologist Tracy Cottam says, the reason we're exhausted, she says, we're overwhelmed with information we cannot act upon. We're flooded with news, outrage, commentary, analysis, but offered almost no agency. We're shown everything that's wrong, and we just keep scrolling. Our media ecosystem does not reward wisdom. It rewards outrage. Fear spreads faster than hope. Anger is more viral than joy. And many of our leaders, political, cultural, even religious, have figured out how to exploit that for their own benefit. I call this the shiny red button strategy. Find something that people get really upset about. That's the shiny red button. And you bring it out and you say, look at this problem. This is horrible, isn't it? Everyone gets upset and angry. Well, I can fix this problem if only you will first vote for me, give me money, join my club, whatever it is, right? Subscribe to my whatever, right? And then everyone does that. And then you take that button and you put it back. And because you don't want to solve that problem. The minute you solve the problem, the minute you push the button and fix it, you got nothing, right? Everyone goes away. And so, you find something the people are angry about, you promise to fight it, but you never want to actually solve it. And so the goal is to keep people outraged but never empowered. And after a while, that kind of constant activation is exhausting. And it's really why so many of us, if you're on social media, after a while, you just say, I can't take it anymore. I got to take a break. I got to take a Facebook fast or whatever. Delete my Instagram, my Facebook, turn it off, put my phone away. A lot of people are even turning to flip phones. You know that? Young people are literally going back to flip phones. because they don't want to be constantly aware of, of this, what's going on. And so, the reaction to this exhaustion is often to disconnect, to log off, to pull back. But here's the irony of that. Withdrawal, pulling back, doesn't heal us. Again, the sociologist Tressie Cottom that I was listening to, she said this: we're not exhausted because we know too much. We're exhausted because we're doing too little together. We are wired not just to consume stories, but to participate in those stories. Which is why, for me personally, documentaries, as much as I love them, quite often will really frustrate me, right? I'm watching the documentary and it's telling me, exposing something, showing me something, oh my gosh, and the more it goes on, you get more and more upset, and oh my God, I can't believe it, and then the credits roll. Like, what? That's it? What do I do? Give me some action. What can I do to respond to this? But the credits just roll and that's it. So what can we do when we feel overwhelmed? Well, let me suggest we should do the opposite of what fear tells us to do. If you are exhausted by injustice, engage. If you're tired of dehumanizing policies, serve real people. If you're drained by this us versus them narrative, tell a different story as loud as you can. A couple of weeks ago, when I was putting together this message and I was thinking about these things, I realized something uncomfortable about myself, and maybe you can relate to this. That I had a routine, right? I wake up in the morning, get out of bed, go in the kitchen, get my coffee, get my phone, and I'm sitting there drinking my coffee and eating my oatmeal, and I'm scrolling through, and I just see all these things, and every story I see is just outrage. Oh, what? I can't believe, and then what do? I share that. I forward it on, right? And the next thing, look, show Wendy, look, can you believe that? Oh my gosh. And then I share that. And the next thing, and I'm just sharing all this stuff that makes me angry, makes me upset. And so I decided, you know what? Maybe I shouldn't do that. Maybe that's a bad idea for me. So I tried this. I said, for a week, I'm only going to post and share things that are about oneness, that are about connection, that are about life, right? That are about light. And that's what I'm going to put out into the world. And I'm telling you, something shifted. It made a difference. Because when you change the story you tell, you change the future that you can imagine. And again, here's the deeper truth about all of these things. Human beings are not designed to heal in isolation. Research shows that the antidote to addiction, by the way, is not willpower, it's actually community and connection. For years and years, the narrative around the study and the treatment of addiction was based on an experiment that was done a long time ago, where they had a rat. They put this rat in a cage all by itself, and the rat had a water bottle on this side that was pure, clean water, and a water bottle on this side that was laced with cocaine or heroin. And they observed what the rat would do. Well, after a while, the rat would only go to the bottle with the cocaine and the heroin and would drink so much of it that it would die. And so they said, okay, well, that's the problem with addiction, right? If you have access to the drug, you'll get addicted to it and it'll kill you eventually. And that's the way we thought about addiction, and that's the way we treated addiction. And it wasn't until really just a few years ago that another scientist looked at that experiment, that founding experiment, that story that impacted the way everybody was talking about and treating addiction. And he looked at that original story and he said, there's something wrong with that story. Why is that rat all by himself? So he started something called Rat Park. And he had a big cage and he just filled it with rats. And they had toys and they had snacks and they could procreate and they could do all kinds of great things. They had sociology, right? They had connection. They had community with one another. And he had the same two bottles, the clear water, the clean water, and the water with the drugs in it. And guess what happened? Not a single rat got addicted to the drug water. None of them died. Wow. So what was the difference? Community and connection. That's what made the difference. And that has started to change the way we think about addiction and how we treat it. That addiction wasn't about the substance, it was the absence of belonging. And the same is true for human beings. When people are traumatized, isolated, beaten down by life, they will bond with something, anything that brings relief. Drugs, alcohol, gambling, social media. But healthy bonds with other human beings, those bonds heal us. It's the reason why solitary confinement is considered a form of torture. Not because humans need entertainment or stimulus, but because the human soul cannot survive in isolation from other human beings. I think it's one of the reasons why Jesus says, whenever two or three are gathered, I am there among them. Not because Christ shows up, because it's that Christ is already in us. And Christ thrives in relationship, in the connection. Christ is in the midst of that connection, that relationship, and that oneness. One of my favorite mystics is Black Elk. And speaking about this, Black Elk says, the first peace is that which comes within the souls of people when they realize their relationship, their oneness within the universe and all its powers. Peace comes when they realize at the center of the universe dwells the Great Spirit, and that its center is really everywhere and within each of us. So I believe there's a better story that we're being invited into. It's not a story about heroes who are coming to save us, and it's not a story about burning everything down and starting over. And it's not a story about retreating into ourselves. It's a story where connection is the revolution, where engagement is where we find our healing, where community is not optional, but essential. And let me tell you, when you fall on hard times, it will not be your Instagram followers who show up and help you, right? Those are not the people that will come and help you and heal you. No, it'll be your neighbors, your family, your friends, your church, your community. We need one another, and we always have. And the world does not change because one person is powerful enough or wealthy enough to swoop in and fix it. No, it changes when people remember they belong to each other. And so here's the good news. The future is not waiting on a superhero billionaire. It's not waiting on a perfect system or a better politician. Thank God. It's not waiting on the algorithm to change in our favor. The future is waiting for us. Each time we choose connection over isolation, when we engage instead of retreat, when we tell a story of oneness in a world addicted to division, we are changing the future. The lie says we're separate. The truth says we belong. The lie says pull away. And the truth says lean in. And when we gather, when two or three come together in love, courage, and shared humanity, something holy happens. Not because Christ finally arrives, but because Christ is finally revealed. And so let's tell better stories. Let's build deeper connections. Let's engage the world instead of trying to escape it. Because the healing power of this moment, the hope of the future, the story that changes everything, it is the story of us. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much. As you may be able to tell, I have two songs that are going, oh, this one, that one, this one, that one, this one, that one. Here in this place, a new light is streaming. Shadows of doubt are vanished away. See in this space our fears and our dreamings brought here to you in the light of this day. Gather us in, the lost and forsaken. Gather us in, our spirits in flame. Call to us now and we shall awaken. We shall arise at the sound of our name. We are the young, our lives are a mystery. We are the old who yearn for your face. We have been sung throughout all of history, called to be light in the whole human race. Gather us in, the rich and the haughty. Gather us in, the proud and the strong. Give us a heart so meek and so lowly. Give us the courage to enter the song. Not just in buildings small and confining, not in some heaven light years away. Here in this place a new light is shining. Now is God present, and now is the day. Gather us in and hold us forever. Gather us in and make us your own. Gather us in, all peoples together, for of love in our flesh and our bone, for of love in our heart and our homes. Thank you. This is a song by Marty Haugen, written in 1981. So good for today.
Thank you so much, Melody. Your name is appropriate. Definitely. Would you be so kind as to leave all your stories behind for a moment and enter the silence? In the scripture it says, "Do you not know that you are God's temple and that God's Spirit dwells within you?" Take that into your being. Allow the Spirit to flow within. The light of love is within. Visualize that light. When concerns arise, offer them to the light. There is nothing to fear. Affirm to yourself, I am light. I am love. Now just enter the silence with that assurance. I am light. I am love. Now begin to gently return yourself to the room. Relax your body, wiggle your toes, move your hands, shrug your shoulders, whatever feels comfortable. Again, affirm to yourself, I am light. I am love. The light of truth resides within me. And all is well. Amen.